Yes.
All right. Dove and Sharon and Lori Coburn. So great to have you here with us this morning. This mic is all yours.
Jesus.
Yes.
All right.
Who wants to go first? I don't want to be a hog.
You can go first, Sharon.
Well, today's a good lesson, and it's a lesson that I really need. So it's all about judgment. So the lesson today, and good morning, everyone. Today, I will judge nothing that occurs. Now, that's a really, really wonderful lesson. The only part of the mind that judges is the separate self, the ego. So all I need to do is watch that, right? Just watch as the seer. I'm watching whether or not, I see there's something to judge out there, when in fact, it's all my judgments, always. It always belongs to this mind when I'm judging another. So Ken Wapnick says, the key statement logically follows from the preceding lesson. We judge everything based on the insanely arrogant premise that we know. How could we? Central to A Course in Miracles is the fact that we cannot judge anything. That is the Holy Spirit's function, not ours. That's really the whole course, really. Like, getting to a place where judgment stops is when we own everything, right? But the mind, it doesn't necessarily stop, because the ego mind isn't on autopilot. The only way it really stops is by not signing on with it and watching it. Because the truth of who I am will not judge anything. But the reality is that a lot of the judgments that I have made in my life has been strictly on the fact that I thought that I knew something. And what's coming up now is that there's so much insanity in this world, and so many people have point of views. That is the thing for this mind today. Pay attention to the point of view of Sharon, because she thinks she's right. She thinks she's fair. And, in some ways, that is definitely what I want. I want to be fair, and I want to know that I'm absolutely in my natural state. The arrogance I had, even when it was the last election, as if I would know what the outcome was, that was just going and reviewing the past, reviewing that there were seemingly different, beings in the times of the days of, let's say, Hitler, right? He would be somebody that would be hard not to judge. We all know that. But, there are other people out there now that we seemingly could judge too. But what's the point? They can't help what's happening. They're pasted up on my screen. The character Sharon and the mother will say, well, I don't want blah, blah, blah to hurt anyone with all these ridiculous things that I see now that are people are saying, but we already did all that. We got rid of the abortion rights. We got rid of, we already went through that. Well, it's really just energy recycling. There's nothing happening except the story is a recycle. Some beings say right now that we are going through an awakening. I don't know if that's true because I can only see my mind. I stay in the I don't know, mainly because that's where I have peace. And that is real awakening, when you really don't know. However, in the process, we do have to put on our training wheels to train the mind that is absolutely insane. There's not a human here that doesn't have an insane mind. It's going back and forth all day long. So Lori, over to you, and then I'm sure Dove will chair, and this is wonderful to have you both with me today. Thank you.
Well, I love what you're saying, Sharon, about I don't know, because that is judging nothing that occurs. And for you to say that,
it's taken a while, huh?
I remember
You didn't meet my mother. She was a very strong person, my mother. She knew everything. That was one of my things, but she was just me. So yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You were rabid. I mean, rabid. Like our
Yeah.
country's going down.
I really wanted it my way. What I know. I know
Actually,
what's fair. I want to help everyone. And the other thing is I'm pretending I'm good. There's no good or bad here. It's a paced up puppet that we are living from. Go ahead, Laura. I'm sorry.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's the puppet. It is the puppet. And I did see that when I was doing a Zoom meeting with my former roommate who now lives in Texas and I live in Michigan. And it hit me. I love this lady. We roomed together for 4.5 years, and we just consider each other like the best roommates ever. And when I was seeing her on Zoom, here's this computer in front of me with this picture on the computer. And it felt like that. It felt like, oh my gosh, this really is a dream. And it's like puppets, like you have the shadow box. And then when that puppet's role is ready to be played, the hand goes up and the puppet starts waving around, because here she was moving on this screen in front of me. I'm going, oh my God, this is so weird. But when you can see it that way, that we're all just puppets, and Donald Trump is this big, huge puppet, waving around and screaming and yelling. And also the other thing that showed me about not judging anything that occurs was COVID, because as you know, Lynn and I have talked frequently on here about our completely disparate views about the vaccine. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist person or anything like that, but there's a lot of what they say that I agree with. And so I was at odds with most of my friends who are liberal. And now I consider myself a middle of the roader, but even that's just an opinion. It's an opinion and it means nothing. And I read this book one time called The Tiny Tick of Time, I think by Terry Pratchett or one of those fantasy types of authors. I don't usually read that kind of stuff, but I loved this book because it talked about this species that was invented in the laboratory. And then these little blobs, little like amoeba-like blobs that started having their own separate personalities. And as soon as they realized that they had a separate personality, they started having opinions and judgments and started getting attached to the way they wanted things to be and what they thought was right and wrong. And in the book, it talked about all these little blobs simply being points of view. And that's what you were saying. It's a point of view. And if you looked at it like each person that we know, including ourselves, is simply a point of view. That's all we are. We are a point of view. And boy, does that take the personal aspect out of it. We're a point of view. And crassly, my uncle used to say, well, opinions are like, and I won't say the word, a-holes. Opinions are like a-holes. We all have one. And basically, opinions are asinine, right? Because we don't know. So over to you, Dove.
Yes, I'll pick up on you don't know. So the part of us that thinks that it does know is always the ego. Kind of reminds me of the idea of one of my favorite sayings. Do you want to be right about what you know? Or do you want to be happy? Choose one. Sorry, Charlie, you can't have both. So whenever we judge, have an opinion, and today's lesson 243 says, today I will judge nothing that occurs. The moment you judge, you are not the Son of God anymore, literally, because the Son of God is like his Father, simply loves. Love doesn't judge. Love doesn't condemn. Love is. It's an isness. So to be unlike your Father, take a look at the movie screen, which is the world that we made. so that we could judge ourselves and others as separate from each other and therefore separate from God. And no matter what meaning you give to anything in this world of separation, you're mistaken. I mean, use one of Jesus's stronger words, you're wrong. You're wrong. And everything that comes out of wrongness or mistakenness is certainly not going to help you. It's going to keep you stuck as a prisoner. And this world is a prison. You know, it was designed to be inescapable. Yeah. If you go by the laws of the world, which, as Ken Wapnick calls it, 2 + 2 = 4. If you think 2 + 2 = 4, you are not going to escape the laws of this world. You have to go to 2 + 2 = 5, which takes a look at the laws of this world, even though they may be, you know, scientific, etc. They were designed to keep you here as a body, a physical body, along with other physical bodies, until your physical body says bye-bye, baby. Hasta la vista, baby. And that's what waits all who have made the mistake of believing that they were separate from their creator. Now, an idea cannot leave its source, one of the most famous quotes in the Course. So none of this is true, but you can believe it's true, you know, and every belief has a lie right in the center, and what you're talking about is lies. If you want the truth, if you really love the truth, you gotta train your mind to see things differently. And exactly as Laurie said, you know, this vision which will allow you to see what's really there, because vision is light, and in the light you see the light, and light is what it is that illuminates the mind. Otherwise, you're going to be groping in a very dark mind, kind of like in the tombs here in New York. They have a jail that they call the Tombs, and nobody gets out of the tombs unless they put up a lot of bail, baby. And yeah, so I just want to go over the lesson for today. Usually I find the Ken Wapnick commentary, which I didn't do this morning because he wasn't commenting on lesson 243. But I did find, I will be honest with myself today. I will not think about what I already know, what must remain beyond my present grasp. I will not think I understand the whole from the bits of my perception, which are all I can see. Today, I recognize that this is so. So if you really want to be honest, the word honest has integrity. You recognize that I know nothing. You know, this Sergeant Schultz, I know nothing. And if I believe I know something, I got to go back to the word belief. Whatever I believe is a lie. So if I really want truth, you got to let go of your beliefs, and you got to move to another way of seeing. That's why in the first 20 lessons, first 19 lessons, they're all about I do not know how to see. I do not. Lesson 1, nothing I see means anything. Finally, in lesson 20, he goes, I'm determined to see. So we have to begin to say, I do not see, and I am now determined to see. And then 21, I am determined to see differently. And then finally, above all else. Really? Above all else? Yes. 27 says, above all else, I am determined to see. And then 28, he puts the cherry on top with above all else, I'm determined to see differently. Back over to you, Sharon.
You know, it's funny when I reflect on the past of the character when I came in to gather, which I think was like 17 years ago. What I felt like was that I felt like, oh God, I'm going to have freedom from this crazy mind. And I heard Dove, and I honestly committed to listening to that room, you know, as a gift for me. I didn't really do very much in those early years that I was in Gather. I just listened. And this is something I think people would be shocked with. But when I had that stroke and I went on disability, I felt it was a gift because I was tired and I wanted to be free, just like anybody else that's living in their hellhole mind. Because that's what the mind is. I don't think anyone's special when it comes to the ego. We all hear it. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I heard Suzanne de Kaiser mention something about murderous thoughts. You know, that was something that this mind couldn't understand because, you know, the nice attitude the mind had, that Sharon was a nice one. But let me say this, if I had anyone in my life that wasn't nice, that was me. And if I was pointing at them, I was hiding my self-hatred. And, you know, Ken Wapnick was very well known for saying it's a process. You cannot go to Oz until you walk the yellow brick road. And so a lot of times, if you're in rooms where people can be a little harsh, seemingly, about knowing the course, what I used to do back then in the room is just be quiet because I really didn't know. I didn't even know the course. I didn't know that God was the only thing that was real. I didn't know anything. And what's funny about this character is when I go back to my early years and I went to school, I was only 4 when I started school. In those days, they sent children to school early. And I had intense trauma from watching my mom. She unfortunately for her, she was a beautiful being that just didn't get the help after becoming paralyzed from the neck down. Now, everything came back after a couple years from the polio except one leg. However, I had so much cortisol put in me. You know, when you think about a child that's born, you know, she's 6 months pregnant, gets that cortisol is going to go right into this character's mind. And then there was also unhealthiness that happened in her from fear. She wasn't seeing me, she was seeing guilt. And she would say things that were not always the best things to say to a child. But this is where the atonement came in for me very early on. You know, let's face it, this is a script. When I ever had issues, and I was only 25 years old, I marched myself into therapy. And by the way, my mother got me the therapist because she, I guess, knew on some level that I was really a child that lived under a lot of stress. And those things don't necessarily go away so quickly. But the tenacity that I had at 25 was to go for therapy. And I saw this one therapist for many years because, in fact, there was a trauma bond between me and my mother. And I needed, you know, a being for help. But that is also beautiful when you can say, I need help, even though you're the dreamer. You don't really own that until you own it, you know? And, you know, sometimes there would be people in the room that would yell at other people, don't you know this isn't real? And then you'd hear maybe somebody else say, but I know, I was at Endeavor Academy. And I'm telling you, I know that is the ego. The Course in Miracles has been written in different versions. They're all the same to me. They're all saying the same thing. There is no world. So the one egoic thing that I saw in the mind that Sharon's in was how confused we are, even when we do start A Course in Miracles. You know, it's our ticket, you know, a lottery ticket that I have held on to because there was just no way that I wanted any parts of the egoic mind anymore. I knew I was crazy. I mean, I always said that, you know, because how could you not be if you're in the ego, you know? So Ken goes on to say, here is my bits of perception and the specific needs that have been my world, the special people in whom I call for help, the special situations that meet my needs, the special parts of the body that bring me pleasure or cause me pain. Underlying this specialness is the belief we understand what we need. Honesty is the humble recognition that we do not. That is the honesty that the Course asks for. And it's not about telling any being that's out there seemingly that we know the world's not real. Because if it doesn't come to them, they're going to look at us like we have 5 eyes. But the world's not real for this character anymore. It's just concepts. Concepts in the mind. The character is an image. I'm looking out, and the seer is who I am, right? And when you look through the seer's eyes, you can see that this was just a story in the mind. The story is the problem. But to unveil the story is to own every single part. And the authenticity that I wanted was to know that, not to say it so everybody would know that I understood the Course. Because I already had all those issues inside of me. I was in remedial reading, remedial math. I have a very serious case of ADHD. So these were all very challenging, but I was also born with, they call it an HSP. I'm sure Lori knows what that is, highly sensitive person. So I would take on feelings even as a child where I didn't understand what was really going on. But the kind of commitment that the atonement gave me, and it had to be the atonement, because those who are waking up are only waking up because there was a calling there. It's not like there's any special being here that went all the way and they became enlightened. That's just not how this works. There is a script. And what do we say to that script? Thank you. The gratitude that I have for my script is immense today. And with that, I'm turning the mic over to you, Lori. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. I'll go on and read Ken Wapnick's journey. Here's paragraph 1, lines 4 to 6 in the workbook. Today, I recognize that this is so. That basically that I don't understand. And so I am relieved of judgments that I cannot make. Thus do I free myself and what I look upon to be in peace as God created us. Ken says, this is yet another way of saying I was mistaken, but someone within knows the truth, and someone is capitalized. As you go through your day, see how quickly you rely on the illusion that you know what is best. Watch how you come up with insane plans to bring about the conclusion you think will work for you. And he quotes, a healed mind does not plan, from lesson 135, because the healed mind realizes there are no problems to be solved. God, I love that. A healed mind does not plan because the healed mind realizes there are no problems to be solved. I read a different version of that, which said that where the ego sees problems, the self, capital S, self, sees wholeness. There are no problems to be solved. The only problem, quote unquote, is the belief that we're separate, right? One problem, one solution. On the level of specifics, this certainly does not mean you should not make plans. We all have to do this in this world. However, Jesus asks you not to take these plans too seriously and not think that what you are doing will solve the real problem of separation. Remember that the ego's strategy makes up non-existent problems, causing us to spend the rest of our lives trying to solve them with solutions that do not work. So the ego strategy makes up non-existent problems. And I saw that happening last week. I'm dating this new man, and we're really getting along well, and we're getting closer. And every time we go to a deeper level of closeness, I'll notice a reaction. I'll not be able to sleep, or I'll start bringing up problems, or start getting scared or whatever. And last week, I came up with a problem that my logical mind was saying this is not even a problem. But the illogical mind was going round and round and round and round and going, but it's going to be, it's going to be, it's going to be. And my spirit, when I would check in and breathe and get quiet, was, don't worry about it. It's not even an issue. You're making this up just to make up a problem. And I could see it all. And yet I was spinning. I could feel myself spinning out of control. But when I was able to look at that just as this is what the ego does. Oh my God, you're feeling all this love and real, true love, not special ego stuff, but really a connection. And so the ego, of course, wants to throw it out. And that's what's happening. So instead of saying something about it to him, which I'm never going to do, because it's just ridiculous. It's like the wisdom, the inner knowing was, just don't even make this an issue. You deal with it within yourself. Don't ever bring it up and let it go, because it's not a problem. And that is brand new for me. In the past, I would have somehow made it about him, said there was something about him he needed to change. And now with this awareness that I have, it's like, oh no, I'm not sure there's ever anything about my partner I'll ever want to be changed. And I can see it all now. It's like, oh my God, this is what women do to men. It's this, as soon as they become our partners, we fix them up the way we want them to be. Like we think that we know how it should look and how our relationship should look and what we should be doing and how they should look. And I hate to be bashing on either women or men, but actually women do that a lot more than men do. And I'm seeing it now, and it's blowing my mind, absolutely blowing my mind. I never saw this before. So I'm really grateful to be doing this course and noticing the ego stuff that arises, because my commitment to non-specialness and to waking up or being awake, I should say, because the ego cannot wake up. We are already awake. That is so dedicated that new thoughts are coming to support that. So Ken goes on to say, there is only one problem, our mistaken choice for the ego, and one solution, choosing the Holy Spirit. Everything else is a subterfuge for this simplicity. That is why we cannot understand anything, nor what it is for. The only purpose of anything is to remind us we are minds and not bodies, and that the mind's faulty choice can be corrected by our inner teacher. Nothing else will work, for the ego's strategy uses the world to ensure that we never return to the mind from our mindless state. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dove.
Oh, wow, that was really a blast. My goodness, I never kind of heard that particular way of thinking, and of course, it comes from someone who is speaking about. It comes from a woman who's speaking about women, and I can understand that that's probably true. I'm thinking about it from even a maternal way of seeing things, that you want the correct father for your offspring, kind of looking at how we are run by our genes, and I'm always looking for the right person who's going to be the right father for my children. So I have to kind of make sure he fits into the mold. Kind of like Michelangelo and David. I got to chip away at what wasn't David. So that is, I guess that's a brilliant observation. Thanks for sharing it here. You started off literally by saying heal mind doesn't plan. And of course, that comes from my all-time favorite lesson 135. if I defend myself, I'm attacking myself. My own defenses hide what it is that I really need. My defenses protect me. And that gets back to the original thought we had this morning when Sharon started off from today's lesson. Today I will judge nothing that occurs. Another reason for not judging is the moment you judge, you're already in fear. It may not seem that way. You know, it might, oh, he is no good. I feel so much better that I eliminated him from my life. No, that is a ego thought system, and the ego lives in fear. So even though it may be satisfying, you may have had your ice cream sundae with nuts on it and a cherry on top, and think that you're having a good day, but you just gave the ego more control over your mind, and the word control in ego terms is to keep you in fear, so that you don't know who you truly are, because who you truly are is love. So you're blocking the love with fear, and it's called resistance. And talking about Ken Wapnick, he says, you know, the only reason this course seems to be difficult, even though it's a very simple course, he doesn't say it's easy, he says it's simple, is our own resistance to it. We don't want to get it, that we don't really know anything. We think we know something, and all those knowings is simply obstacles in the way of what is. The isness is what we are. Isness, God is, love is, peace is. It's in isness. It's oneness. It's sameness. It's equality. But as soon as you think you know something, you're into inequality, because how could you know anything about something that's different than you, other than it's unequal? So you were reading from lesson 135, and Heal Mind Doesn't Plan, paragraph 11, and the next 6 paragraphs are all about a healed mind does not plan. Finally, he gets to my favorite Chai, paragraph 18, and he says, my all-time favorite paragraph and my all-time favorite lesson. And by the way, lesson 135 is what Ken Wapnick calls the atonement lesson. Now, you know, you can take a look at that for yourself. That's what Ken says. It's lesson 135 is the atonement lesson. So my paragraph 18 says, finally, after 6 paragraphs of a healed mind doesn't plan, it says, what could you not accept? Now, acceptance is the exact opposite of resistance. So the reason why this course is so difficult to listen to the ego, that it always says, I'll find the answer on the next page. You know, I'm not there yet. I think you mentioned that the other day, Laurie. I'm not there yet. You know, anything that happens in horizontal time belongs to the ego thought system, but I'll be there as soon as I complete this paragraph, this page, this lesson, this book. I'll reread it, but it's always happening in time. And if you're living in time, you're living on borrowed time, because the ego is giving you a couple of years to find out the answer. No, the answer is always right now. I am whole, complete. When? Now. I don't lack anything now. I'm not missing anything now. Nothing is broken now. Another word for that is shalom. Shalom, peace now. Yeah. So I don't know. I keep going on this subject for a long time, but the moment you go into fear, You are not as God created you. You are as the ego is making of you a puppet. And you can call Donald the puppet, but who's the puppet? As soon as you see Donald's a puppet, I'm the puppet, and the ego is dangling me on a string. You gotta laugh. You simply gotta laugh. Over to you, Sharon.
It's interesting, Donald Trump. Now, anybody that knows what I was like a couple of years ago, even in spiritual groups, knows that I was very triggered by Trump. And, when I look at him now, and this is so amazing to this mind, I feel this intense compassion. Why do I feel compassion? Because he doesn't know. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't realize he's the dreamer of the dream. And to me, he got a very bad part in the play because, anyone that gets up and says he knows everything and he knows, that is the classic Trump type of quality that comes through him. But you see, the compassion came from understanding what Jesus always said, they know not what they do. And that never occurred to this mind. I was like, no, he's just, no, he's going to be this way. No. First off, I don't even care anymore. Who wins? Who does anything? And another thing that I'm bringing up now that Lori probably understands is the chemtrails, right? The chemtrails. Now, what I do now is, and I might be a little neurotic, but I basically have digestive issues. So I wash everything from the market, like vegetables and fruit, with, the way I see it is I just put baking soda and water and soak it because I don't want those pesticides. It's not crazy. I am the higher self. And as the higher self, I want to have a cleansing diet, but I'm not making a fuss over it like I used to. I'm not trying to get recognition for it like I used to, because that is the ego. The ego wants to be special. Anything that we think is special here is cutting us off from source. And the present moment can only happen when we realize there is no other moment. Everything that we have dreamt of only occurs now. So to get to this place, sometimes it takes a sense of humor and it takes humility. The humility that you need for a process like that is willingness, right? Because that's two things. You either have willingness or resistance. God will say acceptance, and that does come from God, it's funny. My kids know that I, believe everybody is God, but they say, what difference does it make? Well, to me, it meant everything. So they're not being called to this process because I was like, oh, no. I want to find, because that's why I really did move 20 years ago. I grew up Jewish and I was not a religious Jew. I did, I dropped out of Hebrew school and my mom would sing. I only dropped out. And the story for character Sharon was I dropped out because my big sister hated it. And I really liked it, actually. I didn't like school, but I liked God. Even as a child, I was so gentle, but my sister didn't like it and I was afraid of her. And I also wanted her not to suffer too. So what is it that really happens to us as children? We are learning to become conscious. And back in those days, if you had an unconscious parent, you're going to be unconscious. They have a new teachings, conscious parenting, and I take care of my 2-year-old little grandson. And when he has an emotion, I do not get upset. I ask him to feel it. It's wonderful. Feel that, because he's a very emotional little character. Now, the funny thing is a lot of people would say I am, but as a child, from what I understand, I was very gentle, kind of like just very easy. However, all of that can live in your body. There is no body, but the seeming body is the unconscious mind. So that's why I don't know, why, I never understood why I had all these bodily things and they seem to be leaving. But what if it came back? Because I have no control over that. I'd have to watch it. But you don't want to own that because that is a paste up of you. And all of us are limitless. We are the unchangeable limitless, So he says here, Father, today I leave creation free to be itself. I honor all its parts in which I'm included. We are one because each part contains your memory, and truth must shine in all of us as one. So I'm going to, Ken goes on and he says, I accept the oneness of the sonship. And that is basically what this course is. How much do you want the world? How much do you want to be special? I use a lot of my, I would say, for the character talent in art to make money sometimes because I want to help my family. But I'm aware of the fact that the ego wants me to feel special, and it wants me, and me helping people has nothing to do with special. It has to do with who I really am. I know there's no world, but that doesn't mean that I don't love everyone and want to help if I can. So sometimes I teach art just to help, because I know how wicked this world can be. When you're in the ego, I have seen my mind go insane completely. And I was mentioning about the murderous thoughts. Those came online when I had depression. And they are buried in all of us because there's only one of us here. So when I am executing a being out there, and I want to fit in because everybody in my family hates one, nominee from the other, all I'm doing is hurting myself. But if I stay inward and I realize it's all one, then what happens then? Then I can join as the loving being that I am. And I'm going to say that to be authentic in the process is the experience I've had all the way through. I cried when I needed to cry. I didn't care what people said. And there's some people did say she'll never wake up. She just keeps crying about her child. You know what? I didn't care, because guess whose dream this is? It's the character's dream, right? The dream is the child's dream. And I needed to own every part, but in order to own it, I had to express it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes in course communities, we all know anger is not justified, but how do you get it all up if you don't own it? And sometimes it's going to come out like you're a real awful ego. I will say I'm in awe of you, Lori, because I know that Rod is in heaven completely now. And the way you handled, his transcendence, I would have been no different in the beginning. Anyone that knows me knows I'm emotional. You can't cut off that. That emotion actually is beautiful when we cry and we love. But when we know they're really okay, and this being only helped Lori to evolve. That's all we're doing here. We're helping those beings and ourselves to walk each other home, as Ram Dass says, because it's always perfect. But to get to that place at a seeming time it takes is necessary. So meeting everyone where they are is the most important thing. Over to you.
Thanks.
Lori, are you there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. I had to move my cursor to unmute. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you for that. I was talking to a client of mine last night and used my experience with Rod just by way of example, because he was despairing of ever getting past his depression. And he's already done really well. Like in working, we do EMDR, the trauma technique. And in working with that, he has experienced the first relief he's felt in 35 years. But then, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I used that example of Rod and, his strokes and then being debilitated and how that drove me crazy. And then how he died 2 weeks ago, transitioned. And I said, I only went through about a week of depression when I came back from Mexico and was upset that hospice or death with dignity through a doctor was not chosen. And only a week of depression. And that is an absolute total miracle. And I told him, I said, this man, outside of the foundation my dad gave me, has been the most special, the most significant person in my life. And I don't have to make that special in the sense that he was a symbol of unconditional love for me that was demonstrated in form. I mean, countless ways. So this course works. It really, really works. And we were guided to live differently 7 years ago. We were together for 16 years and then guided to go our different directions. I don't want to say separate, because he had lessons to learn and I had lessons to learn that we couldn't learn together. But we never parted. We just never parted. Every time we came back together, even when I was in Mexico from January through March of this year, it felt like we were still a couple. And we are. I mean, it's that soulmate type of thing where you're just so connected. It will never die. It cannot possibly die. And but also I look at that as he is just a thought in my mind. There never was a rod. This course tells us none of it ever happened. It was all the dream. And so when I think of the specialness, oh, we did so many things together and he was so important to me, there's another part of my mind that says, you know, you're not Lori. And if you're not Lori, he's not Rod. And you were never living together and you never had this love relationship. And it's all puppets, right? It's all puppets. And that is absolutely terrifying at first when we think, and I go in and out still with the grief process. This morning, I read something or thought about something. Oh, a friend of mine who is very strong on non-duality. I had written to him an email and said, you know, I know that Rod is just a thought in my mind. It's not really a separate Rod out there talking to me. He's the one mind, and it comes in that form because it's a form that I can understand. And we all get the specific forms that we can understand. Lesson 132 says there is no world, and we will come to recognize that. And if there is no world, that means, just like what the Course says, at no single instant does the body exist at all. If the body never existed, then that person that you're making special was never there, just as you think you're this body, think you're this personality, and that's not real, quote unquote, either. But what is real is the love. That love that I feel when I think of Rod is immense. It's everything. It's the strongest love I've ever felt. But what's happening now is if I keep it to his body, his personality, or that thought in my mind that's special and separated out, I'm limiting myself. What's happening in my life is it's just becoming love everywhere. The Course says when love is all you want, love will be all you see. And I have prayed that prayer for about 15 years, and it's here. It's here. I'm seeing it everywhere, feeling it everywhere, experiencing it everywhere. And I am so grateful that I know that I am it, not Lori, not the ego personality, but the I am, what we all are. And I don't want to limit it to Rod. And yet, when I can feel the ego part of me go, oh, what do you mean there was never a Rod? What do you mean we didn't have all this wonderful stuff that we did? Well, I'm just compassionate with that, you know, and I allow it. It's just like, well, it's okay. It's okay if you want to think that way. But there's the other part of you that knows and really, truly wants only truth. And that part of you that abides in truth knows the truth. And if you want to make up an image of a Rod or a special person in your life, go ahead, because you are mind and you are limitless and you can make up anything you want. So I had told Rod when he crossed over, I said, I don't want anything special. I don't want a message from you that's special about you and me, because I'm really dedicated to truth. If you want to show me what you're experiencing or what the secrets of the universe are now that you're not in a body, if you are experiencing those, that's what I would like. That's the kind of message I would like. So I wasn't getting anything. And my sister, when he transitioned, she saw an eagle fly over our house, which we never see. And it made it 2 passes. And then my brother-in-law came out and it made another pass to say hi, bye to my brother-in-law. And my sister walked in and said, I think Rod just transitioned because I think that eagle was showing me that. And I had not even gotten the news that he had transitioned yet. And then shortly after, it's like, yep, he just did. And he just came by to say hi. So I knew when she said that, I could feel it was him because he had a marble eagle that of his possessions that he took down to Mexico. He didn't take too many, but he took that one. And it said Spirit Messenger on it. And so I knew it was him. I could feel it. She could feel it. But then I was just in my grief and I wasn't feeling anything for me particularly. Well, that went on all week long where I just really wasn't feeling anything with Rod. And I thought, well, if it's meant to be, it will be, but I really want truth. So then I was texting with one of my friends who's very psychic. And I had told her, I said, no, I really haven't gotten any particular messages from Rod. I feel him because he's part of me, but nah, nothing. Well, she sends me a video back. She goes, I don't know if you can see my lights flashing on and off, but this is Rod because we're texting back and forth and I could see the lights flashing on and off. So I thought it was funny. I thought, well, here, Rod, I'm telling you, I'm shutting the front door on you saying, don't contact me specially. And you're going through the back door through one of my girlfriends. And of course, that's all me too, really wanting the special message. But the ego's like, no, I don't want the special message because that's special and I want to be a good course student. So, so I could laugh at that too. And then that night, I got an email from a friend of mine saying that Rod had been bugging her and asked her to take down this poem that she took down. And it was beautiful. It was just all beautiful about when the tears go away, you'll know that I'm right there. And it was so neat. And she said, Rod told me to send it to you first and then send it to the Interfaith Center email group. So there's the specialness again. Send it to Lori first, which actually I loved. So I'll admit it. I like being special. but you know, I can laugh at it. I can laugh at it and know it's special and not worry about it and be okay with that. So I'll turn it over to you, Dove.
Wow, Lori, that was a great sharing. And I love that image of the eagle soaring over your home as a message, literally. Actually, I see the message is we are eagles. We are high soaring eagles. And you know, that's right out of the Course in Miracles. Why be a sparrow and do things like the ego? Ego is a sparrow, basically, always trying to plan, do things. But the high soaring eagle, everything comes to the high soaring eagle. Kind of reminds me of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Even though it's a seagull, he was a high soaring seagull who actually felt he wanted to come back to the beach to teach the other seagulls who were scrounging for their morning breakfast, trying to get a little fish here, a little fish there. I said, do you want to keep scrounging or do you want to learn how to soar? And one by one, they said, yeah, thank you. I'll follow you and become the high soaring eagle, seagull. They're all the same. As long as you're soaring high above and you realize that all your needs are being met. What I was looking at earlier is, you know, whenever you judge, and that's today's lesson, today will judge nothing that occurs. You go into a fear syndrome because judgment is always of the ego, and fear is the home of the ego. And what is it that you could possibly fear? And it's always the fear of loss. Now, the fear of loss, you know, you can think of death as loss. You can think of something that you value, which is valueless, as loss, something that begins in time, ends in time, something that you have that another doesn't have, but they want to get it from you. So all those things bring up fear, and you can live in the fear of loss, because that's exactly what happens when you defend yourself. When, we were talking about lesson 135. If I defend myself, I'm attacking myself, because you don't get to see what it is that you are defending. And when you're always defending is the fear of loss, whether it's your body, your life, your money. It's always something that you're afraid is going to be taken away from you. And there's nothing here to be taken away from you. That's part of the cosmic joke. I'm valuing the valueless. And notice that lesson 133, I will not value what is valueless. What's valuable belongs to me, follows that same lesson 132. There is no world. So if you value the world, you're valuing something that began in time, definitely began in time, whether the time was 14 billion years ago or not. It's going to end in time, because the world was not as God created. It's the world what we made as a shabby substitute for God's eternal creation of oneness. And here you have the exact opposite of oneness. It's upside down version of two-ness and multiplicity, and you or me, conflict, war, challenges. Would you rather live in a world of challenges and fear and upset, or would you rather be in the mind of God, the mind of peace, where you are always at peace and you are always happy? And God's will for us is to be perfectly happy. So, no, I want to be right. I want it my way. You got to laugh. We welcome Regis, who just entered a few minutes ago. Thank you so much, Regis, for joining us. And I guess it's Thursday, so Regis will be following us very, very shortly. I want to remind everyone that tonight we have our deep dive into the Manual for Teachers, which is a really good group. Please join us. It's always wonderful. And without further ado, I'm going to turn this mic back on over to you, Sharon Love.
Okay. I think I told you, Dub, that you were one of my favorite teachers and it helped me through this process, because you were already at a place where I feel you were advanced teacher of God. When I got into Gather, it was only 17 years ago. And along that time, I did have some trauma showing up, through the story. So I'm grateful to you, Lori, too. And everybody, I don't see who's in the room, but, Lynn, what you do, and Regis is today's Thankful Thursday, which I think is wonderful. Karen is on. I mean, you can't hear this stuff enough, right? Because the part of us that knows that we're not these people, it craves this silence. It craves this love. It's actually ridiculous to live in a world and be unloving to me now. It's ridiculous. Always, always at this juncture in my process is I pause. Now, this last week, I did have some stuff come up with my husband, and I don't know if it was received the way I had hoped it would be, but sometimes as awakening is really coming up, we don't repress what our needs are, but yet if we don't get them, we don't care. But if we can just say it. So when my husband and I went away last weekend, it was just interesting because things were coming up about, just certain things that we needed to look and pay attention to. And, it's not like the Course in Miracles is saying, well, now you know that your peace, love, and joy you don't ever want. Well, if I want to do something or help somebody, I have to speak up. And I have this personality of being a people pleaser. That's just how I survived in my home. So I look at that and say, who is the people pleaser? She's not there. She was a puppet that the story unfolded through, and she wasn't special. I have to say, my father must have told me 100,000 times how special I was because I was easy. I just didn't I never, ever liked conflict. Although I became conflicted in my life in my 30s, but not before that. I would just bury it, repress it. Ken Wapnick says something that's beautiful. He says, throughout the history, millions have died in the name of a truth that excluded my way is right and yours is wrong. No path works for all people, but informing cannot be more true than anyone else's, including A Course in Miracles. The Holy Spirit is equally present in all of us. As has been taught, truth is one. The sages know it by many names. A Course in Miracles is but one among many thousands of the universal course. What a gift. What an amazing gift we were given. And by all means, I do look at awakening as a lottery ticket because we are listening to duality all day long otherwise, and it's good or bad every step. And now we're in peace. All of us are seeing that peace is what we desire. You don't need a fancy house, a fancy car, buying this, buying that. Just be. You are the being. They call us a human being. And what happens in the world of form is we pay attention to the human and we forget about the beingness. So today, just be with everything as God's infinite being. And be happy because that was given to us from our Father. And with that, I don't know, Lori, if you want to say goodbye to everyone. We have, oh no, I don't think well, maybe we do. You can say goodbye if you want.
Bye. We can say goodbye and welcome Regis into the room.
Yes, and love you, love you, love you. Thank you, thank you,